Every 60 seconds in Africa, a minute passes. So the original plan for this video was I was going to travel all over South Africa and reach the different ethnic groups that exist all over the place. The Zulu, the Xhosa, the Venda, the Afrikaners, the English, etc. And, well, because of reasons of time and crime, this ended up not really being possible. It's also the fact that South Africa is huge. People don't really seem to give it credit. This thing is half the size of Europe. What I ended up doing in country is I spent most of my time with Afrikaners. So this video is going to focus on their perspective quite a bit. And so from that perspective, let's do a brief history. For them, the history of South Africa begins with the landing in 1652 of Jan van Riebeeck and some Dutch settlers from the Dutch East India Company. But they were not alone, the natives being the same as those in Zimbabwe, the Khoisan. The San being hunter-gatherers, and the Khoi advanced all the way to nomadic cattle herders, together known as the Khoisan. Neither are considered anything to do with the modern concept of a Bantu African, and were in fact bullied off their land by the black Bantu African migration south. The Khoi were found to be uncooperative as farm workers, so they imported Muslim slaves from Dutch Indonesia, with the population quickly becoming 50% slave, 50% Dutch. A Khoi was sent to learn from the East India Company in Indonesia, only to find the natives had been subjugated, and returned to rally the Khoi to wage war against the Dutch, which in their eyes consisted of cattle raids. Naturally, they lost that one. The colony was dubbed Cape Colony, with its capital Cape Town, where Jan van Riebeeck landed, and next 150-odd years it would expand, with the Dutch interacting with the natives, the slaves, the German and French immigrants that would turn up, until their language became so distinct it became known as Cape Dutch, and would eventually change from being a dialect to a completely different language, known as Afrikaans. Meanwhile, the borders of Cape Colony now expanded from the Western Cape to the Eastern Cape, bordering a new people. On one side of the Fish River, the Dutch colony. On the other side of the river, lands occupied by African Bantus. Unlike the Stone Age Khoisan, the Bantus had Iron Age weapons, and had taken the Eastern Cape from the Khoi as it had better access to water. The Bantu Africans are divided into endless lists of clans at the time, fighting over cattle, the three most important groups being the Xhosa, Zulu, and Venda, with the Xhosa Africans conducting sporadic raids across the Fish River. Dutch farmers on the frontier formed militias and became known as Boers, the word Boer just meaning farmer in English. The Boers and the Khoisan worked together to keep the Africans on their side of the river, not that that mattered, as post-Napoleonic War the entire colony fell under British rule. The Afrikaners were no longer the ruling class of their newly created country, the British were. And so English became the language of the colony, replacing their Afrikaans language that they used. The Dutch legal system was replaced with the English legal system, and it was now ruled over by appointed British officials who were hopeless and also didn't really care to understand the Afrikaners or their concerns. Not to mention who would want to. I mean, these people had devolved into Africans. They'd gone native. My good man, I mean, feral, uncivilized, barely even European. Now, the British tried to enforce their claim by importing British settlers. But what was weird is the British settlers also ended up hating the British authorities just as much as the Afrikaners. But with all of these things going on, there is another big one, which is that the British were also the people who first abolished slavery, and so enforced that upon the colony. So the Afrikaners had lost all of that stuff already, and then the ones who owned slaves, running the farms, lost their property. And so a whole bunch of them said, screw this, screw the British. We built this country from scratch once before. Let's go out into the wilderness of Africa and do it again. The Afrikaners left into the wilderness, becoming the Voortrekkers. One group ran into the Matabele king Mzilikazi, who later migrates and takes over Zimbabwe. Another group ran into the Zulus, and upon trying to sign a land agreement with the Zulus for the Afrikaners to have their own land after retrieving stolen cattle for the Zulus decided to slaughter them, and then march on their convoy to slaughter the rest. The Afrikaners formed up on Blood River and made a vow to God that if they survived the battle, they would build a church to him and forever remember this day, known as the Day of the Vow. And miraculously, they won and established their Afrikaans republics. Meanwhile, the British crossed the Fish River to subjugate the Iron Age Xhosa and Zulu with the 3,000 years tech advantage, and unlike the Dutch, the industrial base and navy to supply a large invasion force. The Africans lost, but do manage to embarrass the British at Isandlwana, outnumbering the British 13-1, but they still won the battle. It wasn't until the 20th century when the British would try again, when the Afrikaners and Swaziland were the last unconquered African states in southern Africa. An enormous gold mine was discovered in an Afrikaner republic, so a small mining town was set up next to it, called Johannesburg. Now, the owners of the mine were known as the Randlords, and they imported cheap labour from Cape Colony, cheap white labour, to work in the mine so they could make their profits. A lot of them. They imported 60,000 poor whites in a republic which only had 30,000 Afrikaner males. And so if these mine workers were given the right to vote, they would likely, or it was feared, that they would vote to join with Britain and suddenly the Afrikaners would lose their country yet again, which meant these people were now an oppressed minority who needed to be liberated by the British. Following this, the British decided they would build up massive forces and then shock and awe the Afrikaner states. And this second war is insane. Everyone looks like a comic book villain version of what you imagine. So the British were led by Neville Chamberlain's dad, who is the most imperialist-looking British man I've ever seen. And on the other side, the Afrikaners were led by a bunch of bearded wildermen. The British casus belli of "Gimme that, it's mine" was internationally mocked, with the Afrikaners being supported by the Germans. And so preemptively, knowing this was coming, the Afrikaners mobilized 30,000 men into Afrikaner commando units. The British mobilized 350,000 British soldiers, 150,000 Imperial soldiers, and 100,000 African troops. They relieved the sieges and then marched on the Afrikaner states and captured the capital of Pretoria. And for the British, this should have been the end of the matter. The enemy army was routed, their capital had fallen, the war was over. But southern Africa is huge, and the men just retreated into the countryside to wage a guerrilla war. The war dragged on for 3 years, with the British eventually resorting to scorched earth tactics of destroying every homestead, poisoning every well, and then kidnapping the civilian population and forcing them into concentration camps overburdened with disease and no food. What you're looking at is a 7-year-old girl. The British could not destroy the Afrikaners' ability to fight, and so they took away everything that there was worth fighting for. Swaziland, watching the British get this close to exterminating the Afrikaners off the face of the earth, immediately declared itself a British protectorate and pledged allegiance to London. And so the British rolled the entire region into this thing now known as the Union of South Africa, with a new flag, a Dutch flag with an emblem of the 2 Afrikaner republics that had just been annexed, and a British flag next to it. But what about those poor whites that had just been liberated? Well, not so much. The men who benefited most from destroying the Afrikaner states and stealing the gold and diamonds in the ground were a group of men known as the Randlords, who were going to become stupidly wealthy from running the mines. Now, 2/3 of the Randlords were Jewish, and I bring that up for a reason. It's going to become relevant later. And these guys, well, they imported this cheap white labor when it was an Afrikaner state. But these white people, they were cheap. But they were demanding pay rises. And there was cheaper labor. The Africans. Johannesburg went from being majority white to minority white. And then there was a armed white nationalist Anglo-Saxon uprising against the Randlords, with this group of men forming themselves into commando units, just like the Afrikaners had before, to fight against the British administration. And this far-right, white nationalist Anglo-Saxon rebellion was led by the Communist Party of South Africa. Yeah, no kidding. Their slogan was, "Workers of the world unite for a white South Africa." For those of you wondering what the hell, well, the Communist parties at this time saw themselves as the representatives of the industrial worker, and so these poor whites were the guys who had really built these mines and therefore had some ownership to the damn thing and should be compensated. So they were representing them. So they saw the Africans coming in and working for cheaper as just as bad as the capitalist Randlords, who were living off the backs of the poor whites. These Africans also hadn't built the place and were now living off the back of their work. But they were about as successful as the Afrikaners. The British turned up with artillery, machine guns, and tanks and put the thing down. British really were the original tankies. Only 12 years after the First Boer War, with the concentration camps, World War I broke out, and these Afrikaners were now being asked to die for the British to fight the Germans. And they really didn't want to, because the Germans were the only people who supported them. And so a bunch of them decided to do an open rebellion, but were crushed by the British. When World War I was over, there was a chance that everyone could come together. And then World War II happened. Now, being asked to die for the people who put you in concentration camps once is bad enough. Being asked to die for them twice is insane. And so 350,000 Afrikaners joined a Nazi organization to fight back against the British and get their country back, sympathizing with the Nazi enemy, because they were sick of dying for the British, the ones who had put them in concentration camps. It's a wild, wild situation. Also not big fans of the Jews. Might have had something to do with the Randlords. And so the 1948 election was won by the Afrikaner National Party, who would stay in power for another 50 straight years. The party won on the platform of enforcing separation, known as Apartheid in Afrikaans. But the leadership must have seen itself as also getting their damn country back from the British, and they sure weren't going to let it go away again. And so they decided to remove the British Queen as the head of state and became a republic, and then forced Afrikaner culture as the center point of South African life, with the death vow becoming a national holiday, for example. A lot of people see this period of history as kind of mad, but, well, the Afrikaners saw them as getting their own country back, and weirdly, they had a justification for the apartheid system, which is that the Africans had also lost their countries, and so the Afrikaners were going to give these people their countries back too. They set up a system known as Bantustans, meaning Bantu lands. The word stan just means land. Tajikistan, land of the Tajiks. Uzbekistan, land of the Uzbeks, etc. So the various Bantustans would be set up, one for the Xhosa, one for the Zulu, one for the Venda, etc., etc., etc.
These black people are as different to one another as we whites are. Africa is multinational, and it will and must develop as a number of nation states.
Some of them, like Jigsaw Land, as it was nicknamed, managed to get full independence from the white minority government. But these things were a bit of a joke. I mean, they had terrible borders, ridiculous levels of corruption, and also no international recognition. Most people think of the policy of apartheid as just those little signs that you would find in the capitals, which show which bench is for white people and which isn't, which of course comes off as comically evil in those senses. But the apartheid government had this justification that they were giving back their nations. For the Africans, they were going to have their own lands again, their own countries, their own little kingdoms, as they originally did. But the thing is, South Africa just wasn't the place it was in 1900. In 1900, Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Pretoria were all majority white, whereas by the time of independence after World War II, only Pretoria was, and only 60%. But this policy of separation became a real sticking point, and neither of the new superpowers particularly liked them, the United States or the Soviet Union, and the British Empire was now just this fallen empire crumbling away. And so the only friends that South Africa had was Rhodesia to the north, being an Anglo-Saxon white minority government, and Israel. Also Southern Americans. funny connections. The socialist side of the earth decided to fund a black insurgency to overthrow the white minority government. This time, they were going to go through the Communist Party of South Africa, who now were no longer about the industrial workers, but instead about black liberation, with the main organization being the African National Congress, or ANC. The ANC obviously won in the end. The strategy they deployed to get that victory was known as People's War, using base areas to then set up a, terror wing of the party to conduct terror strikes against the population, planting bombs, for example, killing both black and white, until in the black areas of the country, the population had to make the decision of side with the ANC or be killed. It's a pretty simple decision. And then they expanded this, terror campaign to the rest of the country, to the point that the minority white government could either accept that they were going to be in charge and capitulate, or lose half of the country to chaos. And so they capitulated. Well, with the fall of the white minority government and the handing over to the ANC, there's a whole bunch of stuff we could go into. Really complicated, can't be bothered, so detailed. I'll link a documentary in the description that I think is amazing with all the backroom deals and stuff, interviewing the people who lived through it and conducted some of this stuff. But the main takeaway was, for me, outside of South Africa, we get this image that the ANC were this unified African front with non-violent means, whereas in reality, things were very different. There were opposition groups like the Inkatha Freedom Party, who were an alternative to the ANC, and so what do you do with competition? Well, you kill them. But regardless, the black majority rule had finally come, and Nelson Mandela would ascend to be the leader of the country, a Xhosa in charge of the nation. And most people rejoiced at the idea that the violence could dissipate, all of the race laws would be abolished, and it would no longer matter what race you are, but what kind of person you are, as to what you could achieve in this new South Africa. A minority of people weren't so enthusiastic. Mainly the Rhodesians, who had fled black majority rule in Rhodesia and had resettled in South Africa, and quite a lot of Afrikaners who were distrustful that this was all going to work out. Some, more radical, saying that we're just going to try and find our own homeland again since this is the fourth bloody time, and the rest of them thinking about state-proofing their life for when the collapse might come. But this was a minority opinion. The vast majority of people vastly got on board with the project of South Africa. From the 90s until the 2010s, the race laws were abolished, along with the international sanctions, and the economy grew. The Vuvuzela made its debut, and power transitioned from a Xhosa to a Xhosa to a Xhosa to a Zulu. But in South Africa, this is when things started to go wrong. The economy stalled for 15 years straight, the race laws were replaced with black economic empowerment, discriminating against the white minority. Hell, you can't even open a business without having to fill in your race. Threats of seizing their land without compensation increased. Corruption reached comical levels.
Corruption is not bad. Corruption is only bad if I'm not involved.
Yes.
But if I'm part of that corruption, I'll defend it.
The Zulu resigned in a corruption scandal and was followed by a vendor. The Zulu vote rallied behind their own man, the Afrikaners voting for their own party, the English and Coloureds rallying behind a Liberal party, and the Party for Africans demanding whites be slaughtered received 10% in the polls, with race war rhetoric becoming a real problem for South Africa's reputation.
White man, you must die like a slave. White man, you must die like a slave. In your hand, Futzak, white man, Futzak.
Shoot to kill. Yamaza. Kill the poor, the farmer.
We're cutting the throat of whiteness. Is that not?
It's also something Nelson Mandela used to do, but was largely ignored outside of the country. That first guy, Julius Malema, really interesting character. The funniest story I heard was when he was in court on I believe it was a firearms charge. He was waiting for the verdict, and so he pulls out this bottle and begins drinking. And it was pointed out that this was a luck potion, because a lot of people in Southern Africa believe in magic, This dude was drinking a luck potion from Skyrim to get the verdict he wanted. Beautiful place. The country also, well, ended up with more race laws than during apartheid, and then became the crime capital of the region. When I was in Zimbabwe, people would boast about, well, at least we're not in South Africa. That place is crazy, with the amount of murders and crime going on. And so, with that being the situation of things, I decided to go and pay a visit. The first stop was to Johannesburg, which upon arrival isn't the worst, but is the most annoying airport on Earth, with taxi scammers everywhere in the airports, so you can try and use Uber, but it's regulated to only pick up in a car park a decent walk away, in sweltering heat where the signal doesn't work. I decided to stay in an Airbnb in an Afrikaner neighborhood. It was previously named after Hendrik Look, I'm sorry about the Afrikaner words. Same with the Xhosa. I can't do that noise to make Xhosa. Look, my English tongue just doesn't do those things, so please forgive. Hendrik was the father of apartheid and was assassinated by a Greek communist. Post-apartheid, the residents were forced to rename the neighborhood. Now, this is actually Pretoria rather than Johannesburg, which is just slightly north of Johannesburg, and thanks to the urban sprawl, both cities are basically almost one. The reason I picked this was that the locals said that this area I was far less likely to get robbed or killed. But even so, every single home or business here is in a cage. The houses are fitted with large metal fences and gates with razor and electric wire, cameras, and they all signed up to an armed response in case of home invasion. It quickly became apparent that this is what life is in South Africa, living in a golden cage. So I just wanted to film something, which is I booked an Airbnb. It was stupidly cheap, but here's what an Airbnb looks like in South Africa. It comes with a big old fence. And that is mandatory for safety in this country, no matter where you're staying. But it's starting to make me a little bit depressed because you've got this aspect of life where you're going from fortress to fortress, essentially. Every business, every building, every house is a fortress in its own right. So you live in your little fortress, your little compound. You get in your car with a driver or one of your family members, and you drive at speed to the next fortress. And you hang out there. That means you're never really able to just walk around. You're never able to just relax and walk to the shops with your family. Everything's driving. Which to Americans might feel like nothing new, but for British people, I'm used to walking to the shops and getting food or additional stuff for dinner or whatever. And this is like living in a cage. So sitting here doom scrolling, and these are the adverts I get here.
Don't become the collateral damage of civil unrest, strikes and riots. One word can rewrite your story. Sasria. As the only company in South Africa that insures you against civil unrest, Sasria ensures that when things go bad, Sasria makes good.
It's also tiresome. First night, I made friends with the owners of the Airbnb, and we headed out to a South African chain restaurant, Spur, which uses an American Indian as its logo, and was founded by a Jewish immigrant from Nazi Germany. Food here, very cheap, very good. Do recommend. But they do have this annoying habit of wishing happy birthday to everyone who's having their birthday in the place, which is seemingly everyone in the damn place, because it's every 5 minutes. Anywho, the next day I decided I would head to the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg to get the education. And so I got an Uber, and the Uber that was taking me there was a lovely lady, and we got chatting about the crime problem. She mentioned that she had been robbed. They came to her house with guns, shot her son, stole their electronics. And so because the electronics have tags in them that tell you where they are, she went to the police and said, "Hey, here's the exact location of my stuff. Can you please go and get it?" And the South African police said, no. They didn't even bother. She says, yeah, they came to my house. They stole the laptops and phones off the entire family. They shot my son, threatened to murder all of us. So I started asking her, well, who's doing this? Like, who are the people, who are the criminals? Are they Zulus? Are they Ndabilis? Are they Vendis? Are they Xhosa? Like, or what's the ethnic makeup of these people? She thinks about it for a while. She goes, they're all black. All types of black, but they're all blacks, all of them. And never any whites. I'm like, oh, no whites? No, you never seen any Afrikaner or English? Even the poor whites? Because we've seen poor whites by the side of the road. So I said, what about the poor whites? Do they ever do this? She says, I've never seen a criminal white, not even the poor ones. I said, okay. So why do you think these black guys are doing the crime? Why do you think they robbed you, took your stuff? Why do you think they shot your son? And she says, well, I think maybe because they are poor. Upon arrival in the Apartheid Museum, there is a huge wall protecting it, a checkpoint for getting in, and then security checks before buying a ticket. So this is the Apartheid Museum, and your ticket has randomly classified you as either white or non-white. You use the museum entrance indicated on the ticket. Time to be a white guy. Right, so you're meant to be separated from your family and put into different cages there. Doesn't really work when you're on your own, but interesting idea. Alright, this here is the fence. So this is the fence separating the museum from Johannesburg. Taking photographs inside the museum is prohibited. Great. I love when a museum really wants to tell a story to the public, so they ban documentation of that story. The museum then explains that the Johannesburg-Pretoria area was previously white, using white labour in the mines until the Randlords imported African workers, leading to it becoming minority white, culminating in the Rand riots. The bit about the Communist Party of South Africa organising the rebellion with the Workers of the World Unite for a White South Africa wasn't mentioned. The next section of the museum is just the Afrikaner Day of the Vow, followed by Hendrik explaining his reasoning for apartheid.
I don't even want to think in terms of only the safety of this generation. I must think in terms of the generations to come. It is easy for us to make various sacrifices, to give way bit by bit, knowing that we will lose out in 10 or 20 years' time. But why worry by when we will be dead? But we will live. The younger ones amongst us, our bigger children, and they must have grandchildren, they too. Are we thinking only of ourselves? Or are we to think of a nation growing for the future? My decision is for the future. Our policy is one which is called by an Afrikaans word apartheid. And I'm afraid that has been misunderstood so often. It could just as easily, and perhaps much better, be described as a policy of good neighborliness, accepting that there are differences between people. But while these differences exist, and you have to acknowledge them, at the same time, you can live together, aid one another, but that it can best be done when you act as good neighbors always do.
Pictures of black townships living in poverty, which they still live in today, and moving on to the Communist Party's beginning of the People's War against the state of South Africa to replace the apartheid government, including one room filled with nooses meant to symbolise political executions of the apartheid government. But to demonstrate it, they use a specific case, and the case is of a man who bombed civilians, including women and children. They then do a pretty good job of detailing the successes of the People's War in bringing the violence to every part of South Africa, which eroded the state's authority, the rise and fall of the Afrikaners with Nazi sympathies to hold on to their system of government, as negotiations ended with a comically large ballot for the elections, ultimately leading to the rise of Nelson Mandela. There is an entire section glorifying Mandela, and then it ends with a modern South African flag, which has clearly had rocks thrown at it by visitors. This is the end. You can hear the national anthem in the background, and then you can see the flag here. But I hope the camera's picking up. You can see where people have thrown rocks at the flag. Equality, responsibility, democracy, diversity, respect, reconciliation, and yet people are... Halfway through this thing as well, the fire alarm went off in the museum, and nobody there could figure out how to turn it off. Honestly, it was pretty underwhelming. I was expecting some level of political education, but came away with nothing, except Trevor Noah's book. So I thought, well, I'll go and see more, because I've been following this account called Josie vs. Josie, which shows Google Street View images of Johannesburg from today and 10 years ago, and it demonstrates the de-developing nature of South Africa. And before anyone mentions apartheid being the source of these things, apartheid ended 2 decades before these images, and so this generation living in this time period have only ever known ANC rule.
We were launching that new breathalyzer which will be able to test and tell if there is blood in your alcohol within 10 minutes rather than to wait for months for blood tests to show how much blood you have.
As the adage says, you give a poor man a fish and you feed him for a day. You teach him to fish, you give him,
These rich neighborhoods which were built up over generations, only for the property value to be completely destroyed by shanty towns moving in incredibly recently. And so I wanted to go and see a bunch of these things. I mean, what did South Africa have before dirt roads? Paved roads, apparently. Entire train stations disappearing, de-developing. Entire schools de-developing. But when I mentioned this to everyone I met, that I wanted to go to these places and asked if they'd come with me or if I could, contact someone to take me with me, every one of them said to me, look, if you go there on your own, as a British tourist, you're going to be robbed and killed. Not might, you are going to be robbed and killed if you go to these places. So I contacted some Afrikaners who work in security about getting there, and unfortunately they were busy this time of year with the amount of crime going on. So I couldn't go with them either. I thought about renting a car, but then found out that you don't know where's safe and where's not in a place like this. And it's the difference between staying alive and thinking everything's fine and certain death. So I thought, okay, fine. If it's going to be that dangerous for tourists, this place is screwed. So I'll go to Zululand. I'll travel out to Zululand and see that area. I was then informed that Zululand has the highest homicide rate in the country, which is 22 times higher than Syria. So I spoke to a guy and said, okay, well, what do I need to do? And he recommended, well, here's a company where you can hire a guy to drive you and he'll bring a weapon and he knows the area. He's South African. He'll know what's going on. So I contacted them, and for a 3-day trip into Zululand to go and see Blood River and Raucous Drift and Isandlwana, it would have cost me $1,600. That doesn't include accommodation or food or anything. That's just the guy coming with me. And it just wasn't economical. Like, if I spend that kind of money, I'm not going to make it back from going to these places. Which means for a tourist, I don't know how you deal with that. And this isn't a joke either. Whilst I was there and then found out how expensive it was and decided not to, a couple from Devon were down there, and the female went missing, and they later found bits of her being used for witchcraft. Anywho, next day I decided, screw it, and I'll meet up with a mate. This being Ernst van Zyl from AfriForum. And Ernst is a mate because he previously helped me by taking me to see John Edmund for the Rhodesia video. And afterwards he told me about the Day of the Val and all this Afrikaner stuff because he comes from an Afrikaner civil rights organization. And I told him I'll come back and make a video about South Africa one day. So here I was. Post-apartheid, some Afrikaner organizations decided to state-proof their life, with AfriForum being a version of this. Many Afrikaner organizations failed to produce results, but some, like his, managed to set up technical colleges like Soltech, the idea being that Afrikaners should be able to learn, different skills in their own language of Afrikaans.
Research just shows that you learn best in your mother tongue. Difficult concept. We create an opportunity here for young people to study in their mother tongue. that say from us that 94.7% of our students find proper jobs within 6 months. 56% are appointed the very first day that he or she qualifies.
But Soltech is just one level of what they call state-proofing. They were also expecting the state to collapse on various other things, and so they have their own media, civil rights, and education, and some security setups.
We provide equipment such as bulletproof vests, torches, radios, and establish those radio networks. We provide training from our side to teach these guys how to conduct patrols safely, and of course effectively and within the confines of the law.
And they want to expand into things like energy and fire services. In South Africa, quite often the water or the electricity just doesn't work. Ernst took me to one of the best neighborhoods in the city to show me the level of security that those guys have, which made the compounds in Afghanistan look humble. So we're in like a semi-middle class neighborhood, and you can see, like, even here, the whole thing's been turned into a fortress, people's houses. And then also you get piles of trash, which... Wow. So I thought the area we were in was like ridiculously rich, having a look at it, but then this is, you're saying, middle class? Middle class. Okay. The really rich people don't live with...
they live in security estates.
Yeah, they don't have fencing and stuff all over their walls. Their whole estate is a fortress, and they don't have any problems as a result. So we're driving past this one here, and it looks like something from, I don't know, Afghanistan. The proper combine fortress. And Ernst was telling me the way it works is you drive up to the gate there, you say you have an appointment with someone, so you have to be invited. They will take your number plate, they'll take your driving license, and then they'll call the person and check whether or not you're actually there to see them and they're aware of it. Or like you're entering some kind of government institution, the level of security to keep you out, and these big high walls with what looks like electric fencing on there. Mm-hmm. And then presumably the guys at the front are also armed.
Yes.
So we're driving along and my mate wants to show me something. As you can see here, perfectly normal road, nothing crazy going on. And apparently down this road here, that I'm about to show you, there was a sinkhole. Okay, then you filled the sinkhole in and you rebuilt the road. Well, not in South Africa, apparently not. Apparently what you do here is you just put this up. Road closed, residents only. And how long ago was this?
This was 2 or 3 years ago.
So you can see a house just in the back. I don't know how well this camera's picking it up. But you can see that house has just been
closer if you want to the fence.
Destroyed. Danger, no entry, deep sinkhole. And that's English and Afrikaans there,
yes.
Right? And then they built this walkway over the damn thing. God, yeah, you can see where it just falls off the earth. The earth is gone. The road should be here.
Yes.
And instead the road just ends.
They built a walkway across, like a bridge.
And it's been 2 years.
3 or 2 years, yeah.
2 or 3 years.
My memory is a bit fuzzy, but it's about 3 or 2 years, yeah.
They still have the technology to build this, but they do not have the technology to build a road. My friend was just joking in the car that it's like 40k. They've lost the technology. Rebuilding such a thing. I mean, it was only known to some kind of ancient civilization that lived here once upon a time. But today, who knows? Not us. So this here is the South African solution to crime, which is that it's horrific, it's everywhere, and so what do? Do you deploy the police and the military and clamp down on it? No. You put up a sign. I'm not exactly what the sign is meant to do. I suppose it does inform you that you are probably going to get murdered and robbed here, but doesn't exactly stop the murder and robbing. And so we went to the local mall, which is behind a high metal fence, and found a mixture of English and Afrikaner food, along with a small trip back to 90s England. So this here is interesting, especially for British viewers. I don't think Americans ever got this, but this is Wimpy Burger, which is something that used to exist in the 90s in England, and then I think went bust, and we all assumed it was dead. But no, somehow it's actually managed to survive, and it's down here in South Africa. So this is the Wimpy menu, which is still going after all these years. Like, I have no memory of this, but my parents' generation,
So they told you.
vividly. When I told them there's a Wimpy in South Africa, they're like, you're kidding me. This is apparently the best stuff, so this is breakfast. The Manza Brekkie? Okay, basically just diner breakfast. Old burgers that I know nothing of. and then full meals. It's still alive, it's still there. It will never die. What the hell, man? I don't know if they sell that in Scotland, but probably do. Jolly Jammers?
Yeah.
Not Jammy Dodgers.
No,
Jolly Jammers. Bizarro, England. So this is just all traditional British biscuits here. Like pink wafers and such. Strawberry wafer, okay. I mean, you'd think it would be standard, but then I go places and I can't find it, and I'm so happy to see it. Woolworths Foods. 4 for 55. That's like £4.
Here's some Afrikaans names. But I showed you this time the Mrs. Ball's chutney.
Of course.
Bladjang is Afrikaans. Perske bladjang. Peach chutney.
But who can forget Mrs. Balls?
Yeah.
Wonderful lady. What is mother-in-law sauce?
It's usually a sauce that's pretty spicy. It's just we call anything very spicy mother-in-law sauce, mother-in-law spice.
To get rid of the mother-in-law? To scare her away? Or?
I think double meaning, yeah.
My beloved. You know, Americans still don't have this. And of course, Worcestershire sauce. So this is something I love, is that sandwich culture made it over here. I cannot tell you how annoying it is to go. Like, Europeans have sandwiches in their stores.
Yeah.
Finland, Sweden, Germany. But I don't know what's wrong with them. Someone seems to have not explained to them what a sandwich is. They've got the concept, but the fillings.
Not the essence.
Yeah, the fillings in English-speaking countries I find make sense. Corned beef and mustard, roast chicken and mayo, egg mayo. Yeah, ham and cheese, all that stuff.
The starting skins that you start your game with are like, these are the starting Pokemon.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
And then you go to Scandinavia and they'll be like, oh, pickled herring and watercress.
Yeah.
I was like, why? Why did you do that?
But this is like Charizard, Bulbasaur.
The original sandwich meal deal.
Yeah.
I was hoping to see it because I did see it. Ah, there we are. Yeah, this is the Afrikaans flavour though.
Yes, that's just bigger. Those are comically small, but yeah.
But just the idea you have pancakes on the go at all
Yeah.
is hilarious to me.
Because you might need them.
Barbecue chicken pancakes.
And the Cape Malay chicken curry.
And
It's a
then,
very prominent flavour.
okay. So this is the Malaysian influence.
Yes.
So, well, we got ginger beer.
Rye sauce.
So you got your chicken, and in America this would be time for barbecue sauce, but you guys call barbecues brats. And they are different.
But rye is something you do on open wood, and it's not a barbecue where you just like roast some weenies over the fire. It's like you have to.
It's a proper event.
Yeah. And you also don't do it alone. Generally, it's a social thing. You have to be inviting either family or friends to share it with.
Okay.
It's that typical, almost that old European idea of the feast, of bringing people together to eat as much as they want. Oh yes,
I've just noticed. What the hell, man?
Yeah, that's the traditional Boer sausage. So you braai this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is an Afrikaner thing where you can see there it's a big circle.
Yeah. This is the very, very typical Afrikaner. It's probably the most typical thing you braai. What a
Sosti. Sosti?
Where?
This one? I don't know how you say that.
Society.
Society.
Yeah, it's also Afrikaans. We'll stop after this at just a generic grocery store that I usually go to.
Okay.
For more generic South African brands. This is what Woolworths does. It takes something generic and it gives it like my passion is graphic design packaging, and then people pay 20% for 50% more.
Okay.
That's literally the grip. And it works. It works fantastically.
But then you guys have Cadbury as well.
Yeah.
So that's nice. I don't know why the bars are so bloody small. What's that about?
Shrinkflation.
That is ridiculous.
So this is what they used to be like. You buy a chocolate bar for that price was this, but now this is like a ridiculously big jumbo-sized chocolate bar. But when I was growing up, this was a chocolate bar.
Yeah, because this is like £1.20.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But
that's shrinkflation. A lot of things in South Africa are shrinking.
That's ridiculous. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'd never pay £1.20 for that. That's just theft. But even the lint, wow, you can get like it's like tiny little things.
Yeah, for that price.
Jesus.
For £2.
Do you want to buy 3 Ferrero Rochers?
For £2.
Okay, desserts all normal. Desserts are normal.
Yeah.
And over here,
That's another Afrikaans word,
There we go.
frikadel, which is a meatball.
so chutney, beef and chutney frikadels
Yeah.
instead of beef and chutney meatballs, but they're just meatballs.
Another Afrikaans word, vetkoek, which is just a fried piece of dough.
Vetkoek.
I don't know what you call them in England. You just take like a piece of regular dough and you fry it. It turns into like a little. You fill it with mince or whatever.
I don't even think we have it.
Okay.
The concept.
That's what that is.
Vetkoek.
Vetkoek is a.
Vetkoek. Some Afrikaans stuff right there.
Yeah.
So this is what I mean. Like you get this weird combination of the two cultures just sitting next to each other.
Beef curry vetkoek. So it's two cultures colliding.
Not to mention then you've got the sausage rolls. Yeah. So basically, if you want to relive 90s England, you could come to South Africa, and you can go to visit Woolies. You can go to Wimpy, and then you can come back and buy yourself a cottage pie. And the prices are basically the same as the 90s if you've got a British income. I mean, like England, they have a class system here for their grocery stores with Woolworths at the top here, and then Pick and Pay is more like normal. And we found a section here which is even more reminiscent of home, where you can buy chip butties, which are just ridiculous. Yeah, that is home. That is a weird version of home. You got fish and chips there, sausage and chips, sausage and mash, and then here you've got the hot dogs, which apparently are just eaten cold. You just buy that and eat it without it being heated up. And then over here, British sausage rolls, steak and kidney pies. I'm so happy, man. Like, I'm genuinely so happy.
You just feel at home.
Yeah. I've just come from Syria. I've been eating nothing but Arab food. They've got mince pies for Christmas. Oh wow. Like the Chinese, you eat chicken.
And chicken necks.
Of course, why would you leave the necks, or the giblets?
Gizzards, hearts.
Okay. Have you ever eaten a chicken foot?
No, it's not my culture.
So is that from the Indonesian and the Malaysians?
No, this is mostly black South Africans.
Okay, because I was going to say, it's more of like a Chinese thing internationally.
No, black South Africans.
Oh, okay. Okie dokie. Oh, they even have the tripe.
That's very nice.
You eat tripe. Okay.
The Afrikaans call it offal.
Oh, same in English.
Ah, nice. It's once again hearing the English word and we're like, oh, okay, offal.
Awful.
Yeah.
A pickled tongue.
Yes, that's very nice.
We got Bovril, we got Marmite, and then right at the bottom, we got golden syrup. Oh, and it even still comes in the cans. I know Americans are going to be thinking maple syrup is like golden syrup, but no, you can see the viscosity of the maple syrup. It just pours out. Golden syrup is this British abomination where it barely turns, and once it starts turning, it doesn't stop. And because it comes in cans, you take this lid off, and you try and pour it, and it just goes forever. It gets all over your fingers. You guys have custard.
Yeah. South Africans love custard. Yeah, you had some custard last time you were here with the homemade pudding that my wife made.
Yeah, it was great.
That's the other thing, we don't call it dessert, we call it pudding, just like you.
Fish fingers. This is literally like Britain away from Britain. I can get all the crappy food I want that nobody else likes, but we love. South African sausage roll. It's a hell of a lot more meaty. Like it tastes way meatier. Still. Kind of fucking sausage roll, boys. God bless Bub Games. Man's still going. But soon enough, the big day arrived. The day of the vow, where the Afrikaners made their pledge to God that if they survived Blood River, they would build a church and remember that day. They were not lying, and they gather around the Voortrekker monument each year in a church service to remember. Some things of note for me were the amount of songs sung that I could still recognize, as these people were originally Europeans, and we English have the same Christmas carols 400 years after our separation. For the event, men and women wear their ethnic dress, Afrikaner items are sold, such as their food, and also Dutch stroopwafels, various Afrikaner items such as flags and things with their heroes on. And at 12, precisely, the light shines through the roof perfectly on the empty grave for those who died building their homeland. The monument itself is absolutely huge, with statues of their women, who play a far more defensive role than in Anglo culture, a circle of wagons to protect it, and inside a beautiful display of art and marble, explaining the history without any words, and the Zulus betraying and then slaughtering the Afrikaners, which used to include the bashing of a baby to death, but this was removed for good taste. Outside, there were also another series of murals that most Afrikaners there seemed somewhat ignorant of, including a mural to those who died in the South African Defence Force against the ANC, a mural for those Rhodesians who were murdered in Rhodesia by ZANU when they shot down a civilian airliner, and a mural to the heroic animals who served, including carrier pigeons, horses, used for their mobility over the vast expanse of South Africa, and canine, who died defending their owners from the ANC or ZANU gunfire or explosives, all awarded medals for their bravery. Everyone I met here was incredibly welcoming. Like, even though I was English, they were happy to see me there and hoped I was having a good time. And you forget that you're in South Africa. I mean, I was leaving stuff lying around, like my phone and my cameras. And only upon leaving the place to walk out to get an Uber and walking past the armored vehicles and security checkpoint did I remember, this is an oasis from modern South Africa outside. Upon getting back in the Uber, I looked at the guy's dashboard. He had a check engine light. And he had the South African solution of just putting some duct tape over it, so you can't see it. Genius. At every stoplight, we would see poor blacks and whites trying to beg for money any way they could. And I should mention that the Day of the Vow is not without controversy. Domestically, after Apartheid, it was called the Day of Reconciliation. It was renamed. And there were even warnings that it would be the last Day of the Vow ever, the first year afterwards, because attendance was so low. But instead, the exact opposite has happened. As the Afrikaners have reverted into their insular lives, it's become more meaningful to them. And also the date of the 16th of December, calling it Reconciliation Day, well, people were instructed on that day to do... Never explained to me. Because it means nothing. It doesn't mean anything to a Zulu, or a Xhosa, or a Venda, or even the English South Africans. It's not relevant. It's just another day. Whereas for Afrikaners, it symbolizes something in their history. So trying to change the name to something else just seemed dumb. I should mention at this point, I'd managed to catch some kind of pneumonia in Syria, and then immediately flown to South Africa. So I was really struggling. I had to push myself to go and get some footage of these things. And after the Day of the Vow, I sat back in this Airbnb and just thought, I can't be bothered. And the sickness was playing its part, but honestly, I didn't want to go and see more de-developed country, because I have that back in England. I didn't fly all this way just to see the same crap. And so I thought, screw this. As soon as I got better, I decided to get on a plane and go out into the middle of nowhere in South Africa. And so I went to Kimberley. Now, Kimberley was a mining town, so it's a South African town with African shanties and some big holes in the ground today. Interesting, but there is something way more interesting out in the desert. When I mentioned some people in South Africa predicted the collapse of the country, some Afrikaners were not kidding, so decided to buy up a bunch of worthless land in the middle of nowhere and build a town from scratch, just as their ancestors did, several times. This place is called Orania, and the gimmick is that it's a town only for Afrikaners. On YouTube, you will find slop videos claiming that it's a whites-only town, but it's not. White English are not accepted. The town is an Afrikaner one only. The language you must learn to live there is not English, it's Afrikaans. into DC from the ocean. From the ocean, in DC. And the panel decides who must be let in, and you must be part of that mission to preserve the Afrikaner ethnic minority. But you can visit as a tourist. So I did. Booked a place. Some local Afrikaner guys expanding out here. And so he's built this, which is a little hut. This is to keep the bugs out. There's plenty of them. Could hear them all last night fighting each other. And this is what you get. My own oven, tea, basically a big kitchen, bed, lovely. And then this is the funniest part. Got a little bath here. There's like the old-timey baths. So it's tin, which I just used. It's great. You even get your own little Afrikaner duck. Nice little guy.
You got tuberculosis?
God, I'm ill. But yeah, this is a town built from scratch to escape modern South Africa and to build a place that works. And to give you a sense of how much it works, I was talking to a guy in a restaurant last night, and his family used to be farmers, and they're Afrikaners, and they sold the farm to some old couple who wanted to live there. This place had bars, it had gates, alarm system, security, big dogs, blah blah blah. They smashed the window with a brick, shot them dead in his old bedroom. His bedroom got turned into a graveyard. Anywhere else in the country I need to be incredibly careful. Here, no. I just left the camera there, sitting on this little desk. There's no bars. You see a house over there, we'll see houses down there. There's no bars and anything. Security here consists of that. There's no gate. There's no big dogs. People have dogs, but it's for fun. From what I've seen so far, driving up and down. And that's because the whole town is surrounded by private security, which the town pays for itself. And so if anyone outside who wants to bring that kind of culture in here isn't going to get very far. It's just like any actual civilized place where you just live. There's no car guards either. So in Johannesburg they have these things called car guards, and it's these guys in these vests who just look after the cars in the car park so they're not broken into or stolen. And these guys live off tips. Never seen that before in my life, never seen that concept. That you would need a car guard to protect the cars. And then last night the guy at the restaurant mentioned, oh yeah, we don't have car guards. And I'm like, oh wait, yeah, you don't. Wait, that's normal. Yeah, it's normal not to have car guards. That's weird. So, I mean, we'll see, but it seems so far from what I'm finding out. The main interesting thing about this place is what's not here. So if you want to get around Orania and you don't have a friend, apparently this is something you can do, which you can rent these things. So it's electric powered. It works really weirdly. That's the brake. To go fast, you have to turn this like a motorbike. And because it's electric powered, it's not like a gas car where it ramps up, it's just immediately going. So, that's fun. Yeah, this is what, this is how I'm getting around in the Afrikaner-only town. And some Chinese-made nonsense. Like, I genuinely feel like I'm in China driving this thing. I've got no protection. There's not much in the way of traffic laws. Just stay on the certain side of the road. And don't crash, idiot. Now, I'm pretty sure I can't even drive this thing outside of Orania. Anywhere in South Africa, this thing's not allowed. But in Orania, because it's privately owned, hell yeah. True land of freedom. Ding chilling. I love this place. So you find a lot of, I don't know if to call it state propaganda because it's not a state, but, you know, propaganda to remind you of the values of the place, right? One of the lines that stands out to me the most is on self, so saying on self Orania here, which literally means by ourselves. Like, no one's gonna help you, you have to do it yourself. So if we want something, we're gonna have to build it. The town is divided by a main road, which is owned by the South African state, and is beaten to crap, whereas the town of Orania is quite nice, with one side being the hub with the cafe Milk and Honey, along with a local gas station and a grocery store, and an incredibly high-quality fudge manufactory, along with some bars, farms, and a few other things. So if you're interested in buying a house in Orania, they do actually have a real estate agent here. I think that's a 2-bedroom for 1.3 million, 3-bedroom for 2.2 million. Yeah, so you're looking at, what, 2-3 million for a house, I guess. On the other side of the town, you find the vast majority of the town's varied housing, the local bank, the school, a few more stores, recreational areas, which brings us to the second gimmick, which is a big one. The town is not only Afrikaner only to live there. If you want anything done, if you want a road built, your house built, a maid to clean your house, a gardener, you have to do it yourself, or you have to hire an Afrikaner. And hiring an Afrikaner, you've got to pay them a decent wage, or they're not going to do it. You cannot use cheap black labor. You cannot use cheap foreign labor. You can only use what you have, which is your own group. This is no small thing. This is huge in South Africa.
We all have heard the statement, demographics is destiny. In Orania, we've added to that. And we've said, yes, that is true. But what dictates demographics? And for the most part, I would say labor dictates demographics.
Orania rejects the entire economic framework as a race to the lowest wages and lowest living standards possible for the working class, and instead mandates that work must be done by the domestic in-group population, which can only increase naturally, as a way of keeping compensation reasonably high, which until fairly recently is how every country lived. Importing enormous amounts of cheap labor to undercut the locals wasn't really possible until globalization. But for Afrikaners, they have always had access to some form of cheap labor, so doing your own washing up and your own gardening, or building your own house, or paying someone a decent wage for such a task is quite a large change for many. But also the town sees it as a way to say, you claim Africans, not Afrikaners, built South Africa, because they were the ones doing the physical work. While we here built every single thing, and only we can claim it as a result. I cannot stress enough that this idea is far more radical and extreme, not only in South Africa, but to the entire modern cheap labor model of the United States and Western Europe, than the Afrikaners-only town concept, but is also purposeful. If you are going to have a place for you and your people only, you cannot do that whilst importing cheap foreign labor.
People point fingers at us because of the previous regime, and they said what you did with us is you used us for labor in your mines, in your forestry, in your agriculture, and you did not want to give us voting rights, which we understand to some extent because the British, when they colonized South Africa, many of our rights were taken away, and we kind of understand that. There was something to be understood there, also after the Second Anglo-Boer War. So you want the labor, the cheap labor, but you don't want to give these people the same voting rights, because if they have it, they will dictate society. So never again will the Afrikaners of Orania be pointed to and be told that you used us to build your future, you used cheap black labor to build your future, you didn't want to give them certain rights. So that's the one aspect. The other aspect is purely demographical. If the Afrikaner wants to create a home for itself, where it can make its own decisions as a people, there can be no other way than being a demographic majority in own area. And if we want to remain a majority as such, we need to be doing our own work, because the laborers always become the majority.
You get the ethnic homogeneity of the society with the stability and the benefits that brings, but you have to pay your working class slightly more. That's the trade-off that they're offering. And you can definitely feel the benefits of this in Orania. Crime here is so low that it puts England to shame, never mind South Africa. I rented a Chinese electric vehicle and could easily drive it around at night, feeling perfectly safe. So I just want to film here. I am driving this little Bing Chilling in South Africa in the middle of the night on some dirt-ass road in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, it's rickety and whatever, blah, 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 blah. But the main thing is I'm alive. Like, I can ride this thing, get to my destination, and no one's gonna kill me. Amazing things are happening in South Africa. Alright, I just want to quickly talk about how recklessly safe this place is. Even though I'm starting to forget myself. I'm usually quite aware when I travel. And then I went in there, filmed the swimming pool, got back. I left the bloody key in the car. All you need to do is turn it on, take the handbrake off, and you're ready to go. So yeah, someone could have taken this and would have been a lot of shit, but no one's going to. So this here is the Cook Sisters monument. Cook sister is not cuckold sister, no, it means cook, as in cooking. And these things here, apparently, dough, carved up like that and then covered in syrup. And it was a traditional way in which Afrikaner women could raise money for various Afrikaner causes. So, they have a monument to one of their little desserts. It's just wholesome. It's very wholesome. Not sure what we do with a sausage roll monument, but not saying no. Someone wants to build one. Okay, unfortunately the entire plaque is in Afrikaans, so I can't read that. But this monument here, it is Mr. Kruger. But Mr. Kruger is a controversial figure here, in the sense of South Africa. But he is an important man of the Afrikaners. And so, as is common in the United States or pieces of Britain and the English-speaking world, any great man of your history who has become now vilified by political movements, they take the statues, they pull them down and destroy them. And so the Afrikaners out here, who are building their Afrikaner town, decided that they would just build their own. Screw it. Yeah, you want to tear one down? Fuck it, we'll just build another one. Just build another statue. So yeah, they have a little monument hill somewhere with a bunch more of these Afrikaner heroes, some of them controversial. And no, they're not letting them be destroyed by political movements who dislike them, regardless of if you consider them controversial or not. So I'm going to talk about the main thing that I found in this place that I wasn't expecting. I'd seen like Lauren Southern's video about this place and some others, and I never realized how big it was. Well, that's the main thing here, like just, you've got this whole town center, and then outside, you've got these cabins and houses and whatnot that are extremely nice. And yeah, like it's huge, it's not small. And there's an awful lot of unpaved road. They even have their own electricity production in their solar panel farm, which produces as much power as it can for the town, but when it produces an excess, it actually sells it to South Africa, which I got to see in action. In fact, I got to meet the Minister of Electricity and ask him about this, and he told me a funny story, which is when they wanted to sell the excess electricity to the South African state as an export, they had to have a sit-down with the South African government because they own the electricity in the country. Needless to say, the ANC government, not big fans of the Afrikaner-only town, but the country suffers with routine blackouts because it can't generate enough electricity. So the electricity company sat down with the guys from Orania, and the first thing they asked was whether or not the accounts were in order, meaning, do these guys pay their bills, and if so, do they pay it on time or not? And the guys on the ANC side said, Minister, these are probably your best customers in the country. They always pay their bills in full, always on time. Something quite rare in South Africa. And so they got the rights to sell the extra electricity back to the grid to then be used when they need to import it, until they can get their full independence. An independence which they are working towards in regards to water, electricity, food supply, etc. And in that aim to move towards their independence, they even have their own currency, this being the Ora, which is kind of genius. Apparently at first people were hesitant to use the damn thing. But then when they realized that you can only use this currency in the town, well, why would you rob the town? I mean, it's the ultimate deterrent to criminals. If you can only use the town's currency within the town's economy, if an outside criminal came to rob the place, where are they going to spend it? So then it ended up being beloved by the townsfolk, with the whole thing serving as a platform on which to build an Afrikaner independent state. Haven't we been here before?
The basic idea of Orania, I would say, is Afrikaners live here. That is a given. That is who should apply to come here, and then it's a question of integration. The question is, at the end of the day, did the community accept you or not? That is key. And if you're going to be a troublemaker, organize a pride parade in Orania, or disavow our history, reject our culture, if you are blatantly not an Afrikaner, these people will not accept you.
I would say it's quite safe, it's really clean, and the community is involved in everything.
I think that's probably the biggest part, is that the community is almost everyone is Afrikaner, or while everyone is Afrikaners that lives here in this community, and it really makes it feel like home, because it's your community, and the goal of this community is the culture, to preserve the culture. So it's your culture, which makes it feel like your people, your home.
I've lived in another town where I grew up, and since we moved here, it's a whole lot better here. It's just so much more fun. People might say it's boring and it's so small and there's not much to do, but it's much better here than any other place for me.
Okay, so I'm driving around. I'm at a little Bing Chilling over here. And I gotta admit, this place is like those cartoons about the 50s, where the far right will say that everyone was ethnically homogenous and everyone was happy and the kids played in the pools and everyone had their own little house and blah blah blah. That doesn't mean there's no problems. Of course there's problems, there's always bloody problems in life. But yeah, no, those drawings and whatnot, that's what this place is. I love this thing so much. This is so much fun. I want one of these back in England, but I know full well it's probably bloody illegal to drive this. If you look across the river, you'll find a friendly face. The great Limpopo River, full of power, full of grace. However, the town is not immune to South Africa. That big road that runs in between them, well, on one side of the road is a massive mine, and on the other side of the road is Port Elizabeth. Trucks go from one side, get filled up, get overburdened to the point that they will destroy the road on the way back. They drive down, so that side of the road is just completely ruined. And so when people leave the town, they re-enter South Africa, and accidents on that road of trucks driving into people are not uncommon. In fact, whilst we were there, we had to respond to a call to go out and see if people were okay in a road collision. The place feels like another country while you're there, and that's kind of because it sort of is. But it's also a moral threat to the Rainbow Nation idea of South Africa. And in that war, South Africa is losing. People keep moving to Orania and paying a premium for it because of what they can supply versus what the South African state can supply, which is not a lot. I should also mention that these people love braais. The town had a spit braai communally outside the Milk and Honey Cafe on my last day. And it was at this moment, watching them eat with their hands and being mocked for using cutlery, that I realized these people are savages. My local taxi driver had me over for a braai at his house on the last day, and it was genuinely some of the best food I've ever had, which is a top traveling tip. You will never find the best food in a country in any Michelin star restaurant, no local chains. The best food you will ever find in a country is at a local person's house. So I decided to fly again this time to Cape Town, as everyone had mixed stories about the place. It was either hell on earth or heaven on earth, or both, depending on what you were reading. The city has an extremely bad homicide issue, with murders pretty much every single day, from gangs operating out of the shantytowns, which you can see upon landing from the plane, right next to the normal homes. Again, I was limited to Uber, as the local taxis are scammers, and it's entirely common for tourists who rent a car to drive onto the wrong street out of the airport and immediately be robbed and or killed. But I met with a local man, this being a half Afrikaner, half English chap, from the Cape Independence Party.
Well, the Western Cape has always been a unique part of South Africa. So we are historically unique. We were an independent colony of the British Empire before 1910. We're ethnically, culturally, linguistically unique, where in the rest of South Africa the primary languages are your mostly African languages of, isiXhosa, isiZulu and others. In the Western Cape, it's more languages that are rooted in the West. So you have the Afrikaans language, that is the largest, and then you've also got the English language too. And we're also the only province in South Africa where racial minorities currently constitute the majority of the province's population. But most importantly is the fact that we are ideologically different from the rest of South Africa as well. So since 1994, while at every election the ANC has pretty much dominated the results leading up to 2024, in the Western Cape, the ANC has never once received a majority of the Western Cape vote. But despite that, because we have a highly centralised political system, we're always subject to the decisions made at the national government level.
And the Cape Town area does have some very, very, very nice areas. As we drove around the rich areas of the docks, the gardens and the wineries, and even the beaches and their penguins. Steers, okay, so we got steers. I just want to show for the American audience, so my friend here, he got a regular Coke. And a regular Coke in South Africa looks like this. You can see, I don't know, comparison to my head. We'd probably call that small even in England, but in America I think that's a child's portion. And then I got the large, wondering how large is, and that's large. That's it. As big as it goes. Wherever I go, there's always a pile of remotes.
Have you seen these signs as well?
Penis enlargement, lost lover, financial problems. Okay. If I need a penis enlargement in Cape Town, I know where to go.
Or you have financial problems, it covers both.
Yeah, same thing. If you need a bigger cock, come to Africa.
I've never heard of anyone taking those signs up for their offers. I wouldn't trust it.
Well, someone must be, or they wouldn't keep doing it. Probably just a scam. Probably just take all your money and leave.
I want you to greet my food. I want you to go down. I want you to greet
So this is Grand Central train station in Cape Town, and it's half ancient train station with ancient murals and African market. Do you mind if I take a look at this real quick? This is the old information booth. Further floors, a per counter, something in Afrikaans. I assume same thing. Oh wow. Look there. Like old stone carvings. It's weird that it's just been turned into a market. To the spirits and life work of Cecil John Rhodes, who loved and served South Africa. It's like that scene from Chernobyl, you know, the HBO series? I served the Soviet Union, I served South Africa. And they still have trains.
Yeah.
You guys still have trains. There's no dot matrix display showing when the next train's going to come, but...
we're still probably about a few decades away from that.
Okay. Also, I love there's a little sign there that just says you can't bring any AKs, axes, swords. I don't know what the last one is.
Are you going to get on the photo?
But yeah, you can't bring your axe on the train. Sorry to say. So what does that say? Edited from the population registration, Act number 30 of 1950. A white person is in appearance white and not coloured. A coloured person is a person who is not a white or a Bantu. I got told the way it used to work is they put a pencil in your hair, and if the pencil stayed in your hair, then you were black.
Yes.
And just like the Bulawayo Club in the Zimbabwe video, Cape Town has its own Cape Town Club, which thanks to its current chairman has been perfectly preserved in its original building with the most wonderful treasures of the past, as a perfect place to drink for its members. So the Cape Town Club also has two very important rooms, which are all wood, so sorry about the noise in the background. As you can see, they have Encyclopedia Britannicas, full issues, because why would you not? But this room here is for him, Mr. Smuts. But this room is not just named after a man. It's where a man and his friends declared war. As you can see here, Civil Service Club. Around this table on Sunday evening, the 3rd of September 1939, General Smuts and 6 other cabinet ministers supporting him drafted the war resolution carried the next day in Parliament. Something interesting about British political life from the olden days. These days it's a lot more disappointing. But back in the heyday, if you go and read the textbooks, what you'll find is quite a lot of the time politics is this. It's clubs where you get drinks and food and you sit around talking and chatting shit and you make a decision with you and the boys, and then the next day it becomes law. Apparently the British system for the longest time did not have note takers. There were no minutes taken of the meetings. And so for quite some time back in London, the cabinet would meet, they would get absolutely sloshed on alcohol, and then the next day they couldn't remember what on earth they decided. So they had to go back and find the waiters and ask them, do you remember what we were talking about? What did we decide in the end? Apparently, the war in Crimea was one of those incidents where they had to go back and ask the waiters, so did we declare war or not? And they said, yeah, apparently you declared war on Russia to join the Crimean War. Like, no, yes, I remember now. And then this room over here, this is where we get a little bit into politics. Of course, it's beautiful. This is officially called the Baker Room. And the chap was showing me around. He's told me originally, what this should be, if we're keeping true to the origin, is this is the Rhodes Room, named after Cecil Rhodes. There is a bust of Mr. Rhodes to this day. Now, up in Zimbabwe, politically speaking, Rhodes's history is kind of respected in a bit of a weird way. I mean, we respect the Ndebele's, and they respect the British. I mean, you go up to Matabele lands, and you've got the grave of Cecil Rhodes, and on the other side, you've got the grave of Mzilikazi, the great king of the Ndebele's. And so yeah, it's not very politically controversial up there. But down here, they've got universities, and the universities a little while back got a bit obsessed with this Rhodes Must Fall campaign. So they took down the statue of Rhodes in the university. They tried to vandalize the Rhodes Memorial, which is out here in South Africa. And so things are a little bit more taboo. So apparently they have a bunch of other Rhodes stuff, which they're keeping in the attic. And we're waiting for all of this to blow over. Oh, so these are like in the Salisbury Club and the Bulawayo Club. These are guest books detailing everyone who came, little comments. And they're bloody huge. Let's be a little bit naughty. I'll find out what the guests are. Okay, April 13th, 1951. The Civil Service Club, the men who came. Peter Klima, Al Hall. It's all still here. Just like the Bulawayo Club and the original Salisbury Club, the Cape Town Club, which was founded by Rhodes, has a snooker room. Yep, wrong one. In need of a little work. As you can see, these massive tables that snooker is. Old original holes, netting, these massive cues over here. And of course, the things to help you reach over the table. We have these chests, the old scoring system. Just move the thing up and down. Wow, just made of wood. People wondering, snooker is a very different game to pool. It takes a lot longer, quite a bit more skill. Okay, so Trump's offering refugee status to white Afrikaners. but being English, I'm more interested in the English South Africans as well.
Yes.
What's going on with them? How are they faring life different from the Afrikaners?
I think a big difference between the Afrikaner and the English are that the Afrikaners are far more organised than the English in terms of their community. So they're able to far more effectively communicate their plight to the rest of the international community, where you don't have a English equivalent of AfriForum or the Solidarity Movement. So any views that emerge from those communities can't really be represented as well to the rest of the international community. And you've also got more of an ideological divide among English South Africans, which you don't really get among Afrikaners. So Afrikaner South Africans are far more conservative, while English South Africans, you do get quite a few conservative English South Africans increasingly as the country deteriorates, but you've still got a large liberal contingent, and by liberal I mean a left-wing liberal contingent, that is still hell-bent on trying to preserve the Rainbow Nation as is effectively, and yeah, they're quite content with the current status quo.
Not to mention the surrounding countryside is genuinely beautiful. Cape Town, as a result, attracts the wealthiest, not only of South Africa, but also of the world, to have a home here. But then you go back into Cape Town proper, away from the gated communities, back into reality, and South Africa re-enters your life. The decay, the barbed and electric wire, the constant concern about crime and death. I mean, I was staying in one of the most touristy sections of the place, to avoid the real problem areas. Literally, this is meant to be the area that's so separated off from reality, tourists don't have to worry about anything. And so I decided to go for a walk and walk down to Nando's. Nando's being a firm which was founded in South Africa between a Portuguese man and a Jewish immigrant, and it's a beautiful South African succession story which is translated over into Britain. And as you're walking down this place, there's just homeless guys hanging out, it stinks of piss. Some of them are clearly on drugs and are staring at you, so you don't know what the hell they're going to do. You just don't feel safe in any capacity. And again, this is in the touristy as hell area that I was staying, because I didn't want to stay in the area where I couldn't step outside. And even there's just barbed wire and razor wire and electric wire. It's just overwhelming how much you have to constantly think about crime. All right, I'm leaving today. Finally getting on the plane, getting out of here. And I couldn't come sooner, if I'm honest. Been to a lot of places that are considered dangerous or have difficulties with traveling around them. Terrorists, intelligence agencies, war. And none of them compare to how much I really dislike this place, I gotta be honest. And what's crazy is you look out the window, and it looks like paradise. All these rich areas, all this lovely stuff to do, and blah blah blah. And it's not that I don't like that, it's that I can't stand that I live in a fucking cage. I can't walk anywhere without having to deal with beggars and junkies and people I don't even know if they're gonna rob me or not. There are shanties and squatters, and everyone has to have bars on their windows and electric razor wire and blah blah blah. And you can't walk, you've got to drive. Now in America, that's sort of normalized, because once upon a time you could walk some of their cities, and then they decided to redesign them so you could only drive them. And it means that the public transport system and pathways have just been sacrificed to the homeless and the mentally insane and the dangerous. So people don't want to use them. That's why Americans don't use public transport in the end. It's got nothing to do with giving up their cars. It's because the people on the public transport are dangerous. And a similar thing has happened here. I just can't walk anywhere. I can't do stuff like that. Whereas in Iraq or Syria or Afghanistan or Donbass at the war zone, I can walk around just fine. I trust that the civilian population is not going to murder me. I can just be friendly with them. Everyone's friendly. Whereas out here, because of that level of crime, there's just so much distrust. You can't make friends with random strangers. And I hate it. I can't stand living like this. I don't know how South Africans live like this, in their little golden cages, going from fortress to fortress. And I know a lot of South Africans are going to be like, what's the problem? It's completely normal. This is how we live. You guys aren't living normally. That's just how I gotta put it. Even people in war zones live lives that I find more normal than how you guys live. This isn't even getting into any of the politics or any of that stuff. It's just the day-to-day life of being someone who's not at the bottom. Sucks. I just don't like it. I just don't enjoy it. So that's that. Life in Orania. Loved Orania. Could walk around there, day, night, no problem. That's normal life. That's South Africa how it should be, without your overarching crime problem. Getting there is a mountain, and something for South Africans to solve. Just, I'd much rather be in Iraq than here. The place irritates me with the can't trust people. You can't walk anywhere. You don't know if where you go next might be your last. It's just... And South Africans are going to be like, what? But if you know the safe areas, it's fine. Just go to the safe areas. I don't know where the safe areas are. I'm a tourist. The thing about Syria is you've got political factions killing each other. The political class are different political factions. They're going to use violence to kill each other to get political power. That's what's going on. That's what it is. That's fine. Political class want to kill each other? Whoop-de-doo. Civilian population can just get on with their lives. Whereas living like this just sucks. I mean, I imagine this is what El Salvador was like before they cleaned up all the gangs. And, yeah, it's weird. Crime makes you far less free than war. But I did really want to get out and go to those shanty towns and see what real life is actually like. And so I managed to get a number off a friend of a friend who said he would meet me in Hanover Park. And so the plan was for me to get an Uber and meet him in Hanover Park, which is one of these places. And so I asked some of the coloured postal workers when I was sending off a package, the Zimbabwean Uber drivers, and the coloured and black hotel staff all the same question, which is, what do you think of this idea? And every single one of them told me, if you go there, you will die. Not maybe, you will. And honestly, I just had enough at this point. I don't know how people in South Africa deal with it. The just constant pressure of crime in your life. So I said another time, maybe, and I'd go and meet the guy. It was a real shame, because there's some weird things you can find in those shanty towns, like the Wakanda Forever restaurant or the Orthodox Church. Now, I can't say for sure if I would have died there, because, I just decided, no, I've had enough. You speak to South Africans, both rich and upper class whites and blacks, and they will tell you that it's not that bad. And I'm here to tell you, it is. Sorry, you've got some absolutely fantastic places in your country that are wonderful. That's true. Does not compensate for the fact that I can't trust the civilian population. Give me jihadist Middle East country any of the day. When you deal with jihadists, like in Syria or Iraq or Afghanistan, you know where they stand, you know where you stand, and as long as you don't mess with politics, you don't mess with religion, you're going to be fine. You know, there are factions up there fighting each other. The civilian population in all of those places can, by and large, be trusted to be honest and work with you, and you don't have to worry about criminals. In South Africa, you don't have that luxury. And I don't think South Africans realize just how much of a drain that is as a societal change. And the fact that it's just inhuman. It really feels inhuman to live that way, not knowing if you can just take your dog for a walk and trust the guys down the street to not kill you. It's exhausting, because it just doesn't matter how many rights you have written in the law. The South African Constitution gives its citizens more rights than any other country on earth. It doesn't matter. If you can't walk home safe at night, you're not a free person. Anywho, if you'd like the video or like to support more of my work, you can subscribe on Subscribestar. It's the best way to do it. And for those who are $10 or up, I will be sending out the Aura notes to you guys. While stocks last, I have a very limited supply of these things, because they're, well, limited. So, if you'd like to help me in any other way, best way is to hit like on this video. That shows it to 10 more people. Subscribing makes me feel good. And if you leave a comment, I do still read every single one. Thank you, and goodbye. did I ever tell you the story of the elephant and the monkey?